Hi, I'm Scott Gammons, and the title for my research paper in AP Research is Rock and Roll to America's Soul, Music as a Tool to Help Resolve Racial Conflict in America. Right, so, according to Oliver Sacks, who's a professor of neurology at Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York, in an article he wrote for the Oxford Journal, he stated that in the article called The Power of Music stated, our auditory systems, our nervous systems, are turned for music. Psychologically, our brains are tuned for music. When we listen to music, it is interpreted a different way than just spoken word. It has a way to influence us, and it has a way to change our way of thinking. Along these lines, according to Mark C. Gridley, a member of the psychology department at Heidelberg College in Ohio, he wrote an article in the Creative Research Journal called "Why Do We Like Music?" And in this article, he addresses music and its influences throughout history, the history of man. More specifically, and what he states in the intro of his article was that music since the beginning has been a way to bring people together. It has been a way in which communities are formed around, in which new ideas are bred, and in which new ways of thinking are created. So basically this idea of the power of music and the influence led me to my topic or research question, which was I wanted to see, okay, there is an influence in music. I want to see how far we could take this influence, how far we could take this power of music. This led me to my research question, which is, to what extent can the conflict of racial tensions be subdued and resolved through music with a positive message for change, when compared to the success popular music has had in creating change during times of conflict in America, during the Vietnam War and the Iraq War? Now, there's two real main parts to my question which I want to focus on. The first being, to what extent? As stated before, there is evidence to support that our bodies are psychologically tuned for music. Music can have an effect on us. I wanted to find to what extent. I wanted to explore how far we could take this music and how far the power of music could actually be used in overcoming conflicts and helping to lead to resolution. And the second part is this last part right here, which is success popular music has had in creating change during times of conflict in America during the Vietnam War and the Iraq War. Through my exploration, I found that these are two time periods, two significant conflicts, specifically in the U.S., where music did have an impact, and music was used as a tool to help overcome conflicts by creating new ways of thinking. And what I really wanted to focus on here is by using these two time periods and proving the effectiveness music had, I could then draw it back into to what extent can the conflict of racial tension be subdued through music. So basically what I was doing is I was proving two different scenarios in history to connect them back to the what extent and to find the power music has. And this has led me to my thesis. Again, this was exploring to what extent. I wanted to see the power. So basically my thesis was I felt that music was an effective tool in creating change and creating new ideologies. When I use the term effective tool, there's two real main things I was looking at. The first is a platform for people to voice opinions. Music is a global way in which people can voice their opinions and it can be heard around the world, globally. The second is change thinking. I wanted to look at in order for music to be an effective tool, I want to say how influential music was in changing people's thinking, how influential it was as it being the voice for a group, that group using music, and that music changing the overall public's feelings toward a conflict. So this led me toward my method or type of research. So originally, I thought I was doing a correlational study. I was looking at different time periods, linking together different instances where music was used to help subdue tensions, or help come up with new ways of thinking. And actually, since I'm doing qualitative research, correlation is actually for quantitative research, so I had to switch it a bit. What I found that I would actually be, since my disciplines were social sciences and history, I would actually be using a lot of primary and secondary sources, and that's what I was looking at. I'm looking back in time to see how music has affected culture, and how music has created change. And this led me to my now method, which is looking at existing data. It's my form of data collection. Since I am exploring, I want to go back into the archives, look at different sources, bring them together, and create a succinct line which shows the impact music has. Once I do that, I can then answer the question to what extent, and show that it does have positive impact on culture, and how that positive impact can be used to overcome the modern tension of racial conflicts. This leads me toward my findings. Again, as stated before, the two main conflicts that I was focusing on were the Vietnam War and the Iraq War. Now, when it comes to the Vietnam War, I was focusing on a specific type of music, folk rock music, as is known now as anti-war music, basically music with an anti-war sentiment. And how was this music used to change people's thinking? And the main thing I found here is that this anti-war music really led to the growth and was the voice of the New Left, which is a group that formed. It was a younger group that came out of the Vietnam War in the 60s. And what this group did is they opposed military and industrial complexes, and they wanted the U.S. to focus on more local conflicts such as racial tensions and equal pay. So looking at a collection of sources, I actually found that in the beginning of the Vietnam War, America was pro-war. This could be shown in people's views and polls that were taken by the U.S. Census, and also can be shown in the music. The music was pro-war. People wanted to go into Vietnam. But as anti-war music became more and more popular and the New Left used it as their voice, America's views began to change. And in a 1970s poll taken by the U.S. Census, they actually found that a majority of U.S. citizens said they did not want to be in Vietnam anymore, and actually a higher majority said they wish they would have never gotten involved in Vietnam in the first place. So what I found here was that music was actually influential in changing people's ideologies, and these ideologies swayed the majority of Americans to say we want out of Vietnam, which led to the eventual exit. I also wanted to look at a more recent conflict, which was the Iraq War. And the music specifically I focused on was punk rock and the rise of punk rock. Now it is true punk rock was formed basically, or in the 70s, that's when it started to become popular. But it was used up until 2003 in the invasion of Iraq. It was used all the way up until then. Enter. How it was used then. You could see the same thing in Iraq as you could see in Vietnam. In the beginning, after 9/11, Americans were pro-war. They wanted to invade Iraq. They wanted something to be done. So they did. Everyone was pro-war sentiments. Everyone was pro-war. But in punk rock, the main message and the main idea that was spreading was opposing the power, stating new views and a way to fight the system. And one way this was used is the photo here, Rock Against Bush. It was a collection of different alternative rock bands and punk rock bands, and basically they came together and played concerts to oppose the Bush administration and talk about their views of wanting to leave Iraq. And what this did is this actually led to, after about 3 years in the war, the ideologies and idea of being involved in Iraq actually started to switch, and the majority of Americans wanted out of Iraq. They did not want to stay there, much like Vietnam. They were pro-war in the beginning, but due to music-changing ideologies, they wanted out of Iraq. And basically, what these findings led me to is that the question to what extent music, to an extent, is a very effective tool. And this led me to focus on more modern conflicts, more modern tensions. If music could be used positively in the past, as it was in Vietnam, as it was in Iraq, how can it be used for future confrontations and future conflicts? And this led me to the modern conflict, which I picked in America, which was racial tensions. Music was an effective tool in Vietnam, and music was an effective tool in Iraq. So from there, I wanted to see how could music be used as an effective tool. That music could be an effective tool in racial tensions, and how it could be used to combat racial tensions in America. Thank you.